Ten Commandments. We've looked at the first three of our vertical commandments. We're going to look at the last one, that we are to keep the Sabbath day. Again, we have these four that are our relationship with God. The first four are our relationship with God. And the last six, we get our relationship with others. So we've got to get that relationship right between us and God. Huh? It is now. So we have to get our relationship with God. So let's read it. We're going to read it out of Exodus, and then I'll go read it out of Deuteronomy because it's a little bit different. Verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but in the seventh day is the day of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy maid servant, or thy manservant, or thy maid servant, nor thy cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates. For 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in it, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. And then Deuteronomy chapter 5 is the Ten Commandments in Deuteronomy that Moses laid out right before they went into the promised land. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but in the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy ox, nor thy ass, nor thy cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou was a servant in the land of Egypt, and in the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. And I find that one's interesting. I'm going to put it here because I'll probably forget to put it somewhere else. I find that one is interested in the fact that he says that you're to give your servants rest because they needed rest in Egypt, you know. And what would be an application for that today?
You don't need to work all the time. You need to have a day off.
Yeah. Well, something that we all hated when we had it, but it might have been a good thing. What about the blue law? You know, you couldn't have businesses open, and it allowed people to go to church. Well, now people, you know, I like to go to a restaurant on Sunday after church, don't y'all? If I go to the restaurant or if I go get gas, or if I go to wherever, somebody had to work for my convenience to be able to go. So, you know, it's a two-edged sword there. I mean, it really is.
It makes it hard for people to find jobs because if you put down your availability, you're not available on Sunday.
Yeah.
You're automatically out of door.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to throw some twist on this thing as we go along, and so let me just give you some things right off the bat. There are disagreements about if and how and when the Sabbath is to be kept among religious scholars and also lay people alike. Is the Sabbath Saturday?
The Jewish Sabbath is Saturday.
Yeah, Jewish Sabbath Saturday. So when you read the Sabbath in the Bible, the Old Testament, that was Friday at 6 o'clock to Saturday at 6 o'clock. And they still do that in Israel, by the way. And so is that the day we're supposed to keep? Let's go on. If so, are Christians to observe that day? You know, the Seventh-day Adventists think so. That's the day they keep is Saturday. Is it the first day of the week, Sunday? Is that the day we're supposed to keep? Is that a Sabbath?
It's not a Sabbath.
Okay, but is that the day we're supposed to keep?
It is the day that we should gather in.
Okay. All right, well, we'll see. What about, has the Sabbath been fulfilled?
Say it again.
Has the Sabbath been fulfilled?
Jesus came to fulfill the law.
Okay. Like I say, we'll get there. And when I say fulfilled, it's no longer obligatory for the Christian. Is it required that we should come together regularly for worship and instruction? Okay. Yeah, exactly. We should not fail to assemble ourselves together. So yes. So we're going to talk about all this, okay? We're going to try to make some sense out of it in the next 30 minutes. Old Testament Sabbath. The word means to rest or rest day. That's what the word means. All right? So the question is, when God commands to keep the Sabbath, we need to ask some questions. When did it begin? Okay. Why did it begin? For whom did it begin? Right? And what was the intended purpose for it? So we need that, and we're going to answer those questions as we go along. So, when did it begin? Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. And on the Sabbath day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, set it aside, because in it he had rested from all of his work which God created and made. Okay? So it started in Genesis 2. All right, so God took 3 days. Listen to me now. God took 3 days, and he created 3 realms in 3 days. And then he took 3 days, and he populated those 3 realms with the appropriate life forms that could live in each one of those realms that he created. You know, the ocean and the earth and the sky, and even beyond what we can do. So God was really busy creating all these things for 6 days. And so because he was tired, he created the 7th day, right? No, that wasn't it. But he created it not because he was tired, but he set a pattern for us to keep. And you got to remember that God set aside the 7th day, a day of rest, before Moses. Okay? Right? So we need to keep that in our head, especially as I'm talking over the next little bit, because you're going to think until I get to the end, you're going to think I'm shooting for something else, but I'm not. Okay, so he set this pattern as a blessing for humans, because we need to rest. Okay? You need to rest. Y'all have heard me say this before. Rick Warren, I don't aspire to everything Rick Warren teaches. As a matter of fact, don't aspire to a lot of what he teaches. But when it comes to helping pastors, he's really good at it. Okay? And one of the things Rick Warren said, he said, if you work with your body, when you get home, you need to rest with your mind. You need to do something, work a crossword puzzle, read something, do something that takes your mind to work on, not your body, because your body's tired. If you work with your mind, you need to rest with your body. So you need to play with the kids. You need to exercise. You need to play some tennis. You need to do something with your body because you've been using your mind all day. And that's why we get so wore out, because we don't keep that balance, you know. We all have to have a Sabbath. Now, he goes on. He says we must keep a weekly Sabbath. He said we must keep a Sabbath every once in a while where you have just the 2 or 3 days with your spouse. And then you need a Sabbath where you go and get some rest for a week or two on vacation. So anyway.
Figure out how to pencil all that in.
Yeah. I tell you, interesting study. I'm going to give you something. Let's think about this today. Interesting study. to go and look, because you're going to hear this in a minute, to go and look at the Sabbaths that Israel had, how often they had them, and then try to pattern your life after that. Because they had weeks that they had Sabbaths. I mean, and I'm just telling you, we should pattern our life somehow or another after. Anyway, all right. So it helps us to refresh ourselves. Now we got to admit with Wayne Grudem that you'll not find any place that man took a Sabbath from Adam to Moses. Okay? But now let me give you some things. Did man know how to worship during that time? Genesis 4. Did he know how to worship? Yes. They come and they brought their offering, Cain and Abel.
Man began to call on God.
Yes. All right. So they knew how to worship. They knew the place to worship. You can't tell me they didn't know the time to worship. Okay? So while I don't state it, I believe it's there. How you like that? Okay, I'm glad y'all like that. You can agree with me, or you can go have pastor after a while, I reckon. Okay. Do you know in all of the East, the ancient East, there's not any other group of people that have a day of rest except for Israel. Everybody else works 7 days a week. Nobody else in their religions over there has a day of rest, only them. The seventh day, man, I don't even know what I got here. So the seventh in the not the seventh, the fourth in the Ten Commandment is to separate Israel. It's to make them, when it's given to them in the Ten Commandments, it is to separate them. Almost their whole religious system is based around this Sabbath day. And so they identify, even today, they identify with the Sabbath day, okay? Like I say, you go over there, they close everything down. So it makes them unique in the Old Covenant. Real important. In the Old Covenant. Matthew 5:17, think not that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I've not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Jesus came to fulfill the law. He also goes on to say in Mark chapter 2, verse 27, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. So what was he talking about? Do you remember what he was talking about when he said that? They were going through the cornfields, and and the Pharisees, they must have took turns just watching him. But they were hungry, and they were separating the corn in their hands. Well, you shouldn't do that. I got some laws here. That's what this big old book's about. I got some laws. Let me give you a few of them. This is some of their Mishnah. Okay, Mishnah is one of the writings they have. If a kettle holding hot water was taken off the stove, and cold water may not be put in to make the cold water hot, but you can put enough therein to make the hot water lukewarm. Okay? That's a good one, ain't it? Let's get up. He is culpable that writes two letters, whether with his right hand or with his left hand. So you can't get away with writing one letter with this one and one with that one. Whether the same or different letters. You can't write two different letters. Whether in different inks or in different languages. You can't write two letters. I'm talking about A and B, or A and A. You can't write. So let's get a couple more. If a Gentile, now this is good here. If a Gentile lighted a lamp, an Israelite may make use of the light. But if he lit the lamp for the sake of the Israelite, it is forbidden to look. If he filled a trough with water to give his cattle to drink, an Israelite may give his own cattle to drink after him. But if the Gentile did so for the Israelite, it is forbidden to let his cows drink. If a stone lay on the mouth, y'all gonna think this is crazy. If a stone lay on the mouth of a jar, the jar may be turned on its side that the stone falls off. If the jar was among other jars, it may be lifted up and then turned on its side that the stone falls off. If a sponge has a leather handpiece, it may be used to wipe with on the Sabbath. But if it does not, they may not be used to be wiped with. All right, so we laugh at that, but that was their laws. I mean, that was the laws that they had. This is what Jesus didn't keep. Okay, Jesus kept the law. He didn't keep man-made craziness. But now let me say something to you. We laugh about it. But I can just imagine that somewhere down the line, some Jew that was worried about their salvation went to a priest and said, could you write me down some stuff to explain what I can't do? What does it mean, work? And somewhere down the line, that became an idol. Do you see what I'm saying? And don't we do the same thing in our churches? Pen has got to go on the right side. Right? If it's not on the right side, we ain't fellowshipping with Christ. Right? I mean, you see what I'm saying? We have some of the same craziness in our own churches. In our own churches, and so we laugh about these other people, but we do some of the same things. Okay? But anyway, the Sabbath was made for man not for the Sabbath. So the Sabbath was for us to rest. And then he goes on to say, therefore the Son of Man is Lord of Sabbath. So what does he mean by Son of Man? So can somebody explain that to me? Anybody?
It's a messianic title that was used mostly by Ezekiel, but we always equate it to Daniel.
Okay. All right. Yes. So it is a messianic title. And the reason we quote it with Daniel, the reason we put it in Daniel is because Daniel attaches the messianic title with the Ancient of Days. And so we connect those two there together. And it helps us to understand that he is God. And he was going to come as flesh. So it is a messianic title. And I would go on to argue that it also identifies him as going to take on flesh at the same time. Because the Messiah is going to be a human. He's not going to be a spirit. He's going to be a human. And so he's got to be identified with man. Also to be able to keep the law, he had to be identified with man. He had to be. All right? So yeah. So if he's going to be the Lord of the Sabbath, he had to keep the Sabbath. And as I've already said, Jesus was at odds with the religious leaders because they had perverted the law. They'd made the law to be burdensome and cumbersome, and the only people that could keep the laws was the people that were full-time law keepers. That they were the only one, and they couldn't keep the law. Paul said that. And so they couldn't keep the law either, but they were the only people, because they studied all these laws. They studied them. All right. Again, let me say this. This is under the old covenant. All this is under the old covenant. All right? So, if we can conclude the Sabbath is not binding today, would you say that it's binding or not binding today?
I would say yes through Christ.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. So, if we can conclude that it's not binding today, let's just talk about a couple of things. What about the principle of the land resting and the body resting? Okay? So let's say it's not binding, would you still say it was good for us?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so Billy taught me this just the other week. He didn't know he taught me this, but I'm going to use it. All right. So in a lot of places in Asia and in South America, they do what's called slash and burn. They go in and they'll clear off a piece of property. They'll claim a piece of property. They'll clear it off, and they'll start having agriculture there. They'll never put nothing on the land. They'll just grow and grow until it don't grow anymore. And then they let it grow up, and they go move down the road, and they slash and burn another place. Billy said, even hay, you got to fertilize your hay field and put something back in the land. You can't take and take and take. Okay? So the principle is you've got to let the land rest, or you've got to put something back into the land. Well, the same's true for us. We need to rest too. Okay? I was just watching. Y'all gonna think I'm crazy. Y'all already know that. Y'all ain't gonna think that. I was just watching this martial arts master. Okay? He had spent his whole life studying one particular martial arts, and he had became a master. He'd spent a whole year what they call school. He'd went, and that's all he done all day long for a whole year. And he became a master, okay? And he decided he wanted to MMA fight, if you know what that is, mixed martial arts. They get to do all kinds of stuff. And so he went and sparred with this guy, and this guy whooped him bad. And so he set out on a quest to be able to be an MMA fighter. And for a whole year, one whole year, he was training anywhere from 2 to 4 times a day, 7 days a week. And he clearly stated, he said, I was burnt out. He got his MMA fight. They had a split decision. He lost. But he said, I was burnt out. For a whole year after that, he didn't practice martial arts. That's all he'd ever done his whole life. We got to have a time off. You know what I'm saying? We got to let it, I don't care what you do, you got to let your body rest. You've got to rest. Okay? You can't go 24 hours a day. You just cannot. All right? During the millennial kingdom, there's going to be Sabbath worship. Okay? So now we have Sabbath at the beginning of time. In the millennial kingdom, if you believe what I believe, that means we got at least 7 years before we start the millennial kingdom from now. And so for 1,000 years, there's going to be worship. There's going to be Sabbath keeping. Let me prove it to you. Isaiah 66, verse 22 and 23. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come and worship before me, saith the Lord. So there's going to be Sabbath keeping then, during the millennial kingdom. All right? Now, let's try to land this plane in the next 10 minutes. All the commandments are in the New Testament, but commandment number 4. That's one of the reasons people say it's not binding. And when I say New Testament, I'm talking about from Acts to Revelation, okay? Matthew to the end of John is what? Old Testament, exactly. Very good, class. All right, so Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. There's 5 commandments found here. Owe no man anything but to love one another. So there's what we're going to try to do in this next little section. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. So here's what Paul writes, verses 9 and 10. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, if it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely that thou shalt love thy neighbor. So those 5 commandments have something to do with our relationship with others. Okay, right? But there's 5 of them. And in verse 10, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is fulfilling of the law. Folks, I got news for you. Paul says it. He says, I didn't know I was a lawbreaker till the law said I shall what? Not covet. And I'm going to tell you, we break those 5 commandments right there, or really 6, because of covetous hearts. We steal, we lie, we commit murder, we commit adultery. Why? Because we covet something that we don't have. All right? All right. So that was those 5. Honor thy mother and fathers, found in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. That's James 5:12. Affirmation of commandment 1 and 2 is found in 1 John 5:21. Little children, keep thyself from idols. And again, as I said, all of these are found in the epistles, if you would. But then they're also found over in the 4 Gospels. These are repeated there as well. Okay? So, let's land the plane now. Why no number 4? Why is it not listed in the epistles? Because of the end of the Sabbath. The end of the Sabbath was in Christ. Okay? If the Sabbath ended, when did it end? Romans 10:4. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. Okay, he fulfilled the law. He fulfilled the whole entire law in and of himself. Okay. Hebrews chapter 4. Let's go look at that. Let's go look at Hebrews chapter 4. Hebrews chapter 4. Take your Bibles and go to Hebrews. We ain't going back to the Old Testament, so just go Hebrews chapter 4. Hebrews 4. You there? All right. Let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left us of entering into rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. For we which have believed do enter into what? Now what is Sabbath? It's rest, okay? We enter into a rest, as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, even they that shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the earth. For he spake in a certain place in the 7th day on this wise, and God did rest from the 7th day from all his works. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest, seeing therefore it remaineth in them, must enter therein. And they to whom it was first preached enter not in because of unbelief. Verse 8, if you got a King James, for if Jesus, okay, that word should be what? What is the other word for Jesus? Yeah, no. What's the proper name? Joshua. Okay, so if Jesus was leading them, they would have got rest. There's nothing he wouldn't have done. Okay, it's a bad translation in your King James. You'll find it in other translations. It'll be Joshua. Okay, for if Joshua had give them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? Therefore remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that enter into his rest also have ceased from his own works, as God did with his. So we see that there's a rest for God's people. So when we enter into Christ, we enter into his rest. Okay, he is our Sabbath. Now, that don't end the whole argument, but he is our Sabbath. Okay. Colossians 2, verses 16, 17, let no man therefore judge you in meat or drink or respect for holy day, or a new moon, or a Sabbath day, which are shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Now, Grudem here, he says that there's times, now I want you to listen to me. He says there's times when we have pressing deadlines, and it requires us to work 7 days, or maybe even 14 days in a row. And this is okay. We just shouldn't make a pattern out of it. Okay? But now let me ask you a question. I'm a sinner. I know y'all ain't. But I'm a sinner. And the first time that I break my Sabbath, if you would, and I go do what was important, it may have been really important. But once I set that precedence, now all of a sudden I can't tell my boss man I can't work because it's Sunday. Next time it might not be as important. And let me ask you this. Who is it important to? Is it important for God's work? Or is it important because you promised somebody something? Or is it important because your boss man promised somebody something? You see what I'm saying? It's so easy once we start something. That ball, when Pandora's box, I know y'all read that when y'all were kids. When you open that lid, bless God, you can't get them bats back in there, man. They just ain't coming back, okay? So I would say you really, you need to be careful with that. So the question is, for a Christian today, should we keep a Sabbath? Yeah. We should have a day of worship. Acts 2, they come together every day. But we see the pattern was the first day of the week, all through Acts. The first day of the week they came together. In writings that was close to the New Testament times, we see that they come together on the first day of the week, Sunday. That's why we do it. Historically, Sunday has been the day that we come together to worship. Does it mean that Sunday's the only day we can worship? Absolutely not. We should worship every day as a Christian. So what do we do with the Old Testament then? Well, what did Paul say in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16? All Scripture's what? Profitable. For what? Reproof, doctrine. For what reason? That the man or woman of God might be fully furnished. Right? And so we look at the Old Testament and we see God said at the very beginning, you need a day of rest. He knows our frame. We need a day of rest. Okay? And we need to figure out how to do that. Is there times that we don't go to church on Sunday? Absolutely. Everybody but the preacher. But there's times that we don't go to church. Why? Because there's something we need to go spend time with our family. We need to go to this or to that. Right? There's times I had to work on Sunday. I worked on Sunday for 20 years. Every other Sunday. Okay? 21 years. And since then, I've worked every Sunday. Y'all like that, didn't you? I don't work the rest of the week. I take the rest of the week off.
Yeah, you got 6 Sabbaths.
Yeah, I got 6 Sabbaths. It's already said, I think Billy once said it. We need to come together because we're commanded to come together. We come together because we need to communicate with each other. We need to fellowship with each other. We need to draw from each other's experiences, and we need to be able to talk to our brothers and sisters about our needs and roll our burdens over, and we need to be held accountable. We can't just be somebody on the island all by ourselves. We have got to be in a community with other believers. And that is what the church is. It is an assembly. It's ecclesia. It's an assembly of us to come together. And that's what we should do. Are we bound, like the Jews were? No. But we should be bound in our relationship with Christ that we want to. And when people don't want to come to church, there's either got to be sin, or there's got to be no relationship. Yeah? One or the other. And so we should desire to come together. Whether we have a big assembly or a small assembly, we desire to come together and be with our brothers and sisters and grow and change. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord God, we want to thank you for this day. I thank you